Huge thank you for joining us. Kevin is back. He's got huge news to share. I've been reading the legal paperwork he sent me pertaining to the case against Pope Leo. It is hard-hitting, graphic, stomach-sickening in parts of it, but he's laid it out legally with his witnesses. Absolutely mind-blowing. And you know, one of the most important points that he makes in the legal paperwork is that these people who are at the top of society, whether you're the Pope, whether you're a king, an emperor, whatever you are subject to the law just like the rest of us. And if you think you are above the law, Kevin is going to come and get you, folks. So I'll hand it over to Kevin right now, just so he can pick up on that. But we're going to be talking about Epstein, Prince Andrew. There's a lot to go over tonight.
Hi, Sean.
All right, Kevin. Yeah, thank you for coming back.
It's great to be back, especially right now. What I'm going to talk about today is a report. It just came out from the International Common Law Court of Justice. Now, as folks know from previous interviews, the court convened in the summer to look into new evidence against the present Pope Leo, Robert Prevost, but also his accomplices. And the further we dug on this, the more tunnels we discovered. And what's incredible is we now have 10 eyewitnesses who've come forward, and their evidence is in this report we're going to talk about today. 5 of these people are survivors of this Ninth Circle cult. And in other words, they were used in the ceremonies, kept alive after for different reasons. And the other 5 are actual insiders. There's a former member of the Ninth Circle. There's a Vatican employee, an informant in the Italian government, an Interpol investigator, and a research scientist with Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. Now, the reason those are all interrelated is we've discovered that this Ninth Circle isn't just some arcane satanic cult. It was very integrated for many years with the military, with a lot of the mind control experiments to find the limits of human intelligence in order to control it. But there's more than that going on. There's actual soul captivation. And we're going to get into this. We have a map of the grotto beneath the Vatican. It's showing a thing called the Tomb of Lucifer, where all these things take place. The term Ninth Circle, in the Latin translation, it's nonus perfidia. Now, in Latin, that means not the Ninth Circle, it means the ninth betrayal. And by betrayal, they're talking about to go down through hell, you keep sacrificing or betraying the things that make us human. You know, like love. People know about, so-called 9 sins: greed, gluttony, lust, all that stuff. But the lowest circle of hell has to do with if you betrayed a sacred trust, like the trust of a child, or the integrity of your own soul. That is to be sacrificed in order to gain ultimate power. And that's the meaning behind these rituals where children are systematically tortured and cannibalized after they're done away with. So let me just give a little brief overview. And for folks who are watching, don't forget, this report is now posted online, murderbydecree.com, under ITCCS updates. You'll see, if you go to that interim report of the special prosecutor. So please read along and look at some of these images and the evidence we're going to be talking about. The case had to do with 2 aspects. First of all, the guilt of Pope Leo himself, Robert Prevost, and then out of that, all of his accomplices. And we're talking people like King Charles now, Charles Arthur Windsor, Prince Andrew Elbert Windsor, archbishops like Timothy Dolan, who's a good friend of Donald Trump's. Trump himself is mentioned in this adjudication as being a participant in some of these activities. Top cardinals like Pietro Parolin, Bernard Marx, Jeffrey Epstein was a participant in these things, along with other officials of the church. And we mentioned Big Pharma because they were using the ceremonies as a way to test out various drugs. And they were, again, part of this whole military use of the Ninth Circle rituals. Let me start with, that first image you have of the present Pope Robert Prevost as a newly ordained member of the Augustinian Order meeting John Paul II. This is in 1983, the picture right after the Prevost's ordination. Now, according to The first eyewitness, we call him Witness A. While still a novice in the Augustinian order, Robert Prevost, that's him on the left, the present Pope Leo XIV, was observed by Witness A participating in an induction ceremony of the Ninth Circle on October 17, 1978, in a grotto chamber beneath the Vatican. The ceremony was presided over by Karol Wojtyła, that's Pope Paul II right there in the picture, who he had just recently been elected the Pope. Now, Witness A states that she saw Wojtyła kill a pregnant teenage girl at the ceremony, cut open her womb to remove the belly, which was then eaten by the cult participants, including Robert Prevost. Then Prevost spread the baby's blood on the Witness A and beat and sexually violated it. She positively identified Prevost from a photo of him taken during the same period, this photo here. Now, that's a standard ritual of the Ninth Circle, but what was significant about that was that Prevost was vetted at a young age, and once you participate in these Ninth Circle cults, your name goes on a red list. You can then be elected as senior cardinal or pope one day, which he was. And others who don't participate or refuse, they go on a blacklist and they stay in the lower hierarchy. They're never allowed to go to the top. So in other words, the entire institution and all of its corporate and political connections, they're all part of this Ninth Circle cult. And it embraces not just church people, but corporate directors, top military leaders, government officials. And one of the ways that they keep governments in line, of course, is through the what's called the Financial Concordat, where Vatican money is used to bribe governments and chiefs and heads of state all over the world. Now, if you go to the next picture, there was a woman, a young girl called Emanuela Orlandi, who disappeared in Rome. And Witness A was present when she was brought into a cult ceremony. She says there's a picture of Emanuela as a little girl with the same Pope, John Paul II, Karol Wojtyła. And the Witness A says that she saw Prevost at a second ritual murder and cannibalizing on June 22nd, 1983, which is the very day that Emanuela Orlandi vanished. Emanuela and the witness were both forced to watch as a naked Italian man was cut to pieces in front of them, losing his fingers, ears, nose, tongue, and penis. So it has to do with, this mass, and in effect, they're conducting, in which they're inducting these women to what's called brides of Satan, who are then used. Often they're either set up as breeders to create, to get pregnant, and then the newborn is offered, or they, like Emanuela, was sent out brainwashed to entrap other people into the cult, to sexually entrap politicians or sometimes kill them. They're programmed assassins as well as part of this. Now, all at the same time, the military is in there, and drug companies and others trying out techniques and utilizing these people themselves. Also, she mentioned that all these rituals are filmed, and they sell for a lot of money, the snuff films, through Catholic Church circles and others. So it's very lucrative as well. Okay, so that's like one example. Now, here's another one, Witness B. She was like Witness A from Germany. She was taken at age 7 to Essen, Germany, in Brussels by an Opus Dei priest called Brother Lohas. She was tortured, violated, and conditioned to participate in the killing and cannibalizing of newborns. From there, she was routinely trafficked to England, including to a militarized basement compound beneath Buckingham Palace. There she observed rows of children in cages, including those with wires protruding from their shaved heads, being monitored by men in lab coats. And this is her quote. This is a different woman now, different Witness B. I was taken to a castle in the mountains. I think it was in Scotland. I was taken to a hall, and my arms and legs were spread out on a table by 2 men in black. One of them said, "You're a butterfly now, you're going to be changed." Now, there's a footnote about that reference to a butterfly. And it was basically an MK Ultra term. Kathy O'Brien in her book talks about this. The reference to "now you are a butterfly" is a method of neuro-linguistic programming used in MK Ultra mind control programs, which was called the Monarch Butterfly Project in its early stages. The conditioning convinces the subject that he or she has been erased and transformed into a new creature, as when a caterpillar becomes a pupa and then a butterfly. Or to quote Kathy O'Brien in her book, Transformation of America, from a worm to a lovely flying creature. The use of this language during the cult rituals is another indication of its ties to the mind reconstruction agenda of MKUltra and its military, corporate, and political controllers. So what we're uncovering here is the fact that a lot of the techniques now being used against all of us, electronically and through other means, first chemically, but then now electronically, they are perfected in these ninth circle experiments and ceremonies under the guise or the concealment of it being a satanic ritual. This is not unusual. Often we know from people who survived military experiments that they're given post-hypnotic suggestions saying you were part of a satanic cult to conceal the fact that no, it was government and military programs, training these people. So, that's kind of self-evident after you look at all this. Now, moving along, we've got as well, let me get on to witness C. And I mixed up my papers here, so just give me a moment. Did you have any questions or anything? Feel free to jump in, Sean, while I'm finding my stuff here.
No, I'm just, the level of what you're saying, it's absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to reiterate, for the viewers, we've got almost 2,000 watching live. And all of Kevin's links, books, you can support him, all in the description box below this video, folks. Lots more details, lots more information in his books. Many of the viewers have picked them up and they've really enjoyed them. So please check those out.
Thanks, Sean. I want to say, too, that the two of us who helped put together this report for the special prosecutor, myself and another man who's the administrator for the court, George Dufour, we're aware of the fact that we're treading on new ground here, and there's a lot of danger involved for ourselves and the cult witnesses, right? The people, the women who survived these things. So I wanted to say to listeners, this knowledge gives us all a responsibility to do something about it. And we're going to talk about that later in the show. So please hang in there with us. Witness B also spent 10 years. Now, she was the one who was sent to Buckingham Palace and was taken up to Scotland. We just talked about the butterfly conditioning. She spent 10 years after that during the 1990s in Belgium, where she was used by the Ninth Circle to sexually blackmail politicians. And her cult handler included convicted child trafficker Michel Nehoul, who is an accomplice of, if you remember, Marc Dutroux in Belgium, the child killer, and Catholic Archbishop Reinhard Marx of Munich, who's still quite prominent in the church. But Witness B states that during the same period, in the spring of 1999, she was flown to New York City and used in a sadomasochistic sex orgy involving children at the high-rise apartment of guess who? Jeffrey Epstein. Eyewitness B said that both of them knew children were being violated and done away with at this Epstein party, spring of 1999 in Manhattan. Now, just a supplemental note on that, Trump's association with Epstein spans decades. Since the 1980s, he regularly socialized with Epstein, who described his, quote, long-standing and deep relationship with Donald. Epstein trafficked and violated a woman called Virginia Giuffre at Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence, where she worked there as a spa attendant. According to Second Circuit Court of Appeals documents filed in 2008. Now, this Virginia Giuffre was in the process of bringing this out when she suddenly died this year, April 24th. She was in a custody battle for her own children, and then she, quote, commits suicide. Now you're going to see the body count rise. It's going to be like the last scene in Hamlet by the end of this, because there'll be bodies all over the stage, all of them tied into Trump, including two bankers for Deutsche Bank, who died when the news began to break about their association. So anyway, that's more on that. But as part of that, let's talk about Witness C now. Okay. Prince Andrew a documented participant in the cult's child killing activities, as we mentioned before, witness B, taken to up to Scotland, you know, that butterfly thing they did, and where both Prince Andrew and Charles were present. Now, Prince Andrew is a documented not only participant, but a friend of Jeffrey Epstein's, as we know. Andrew met Trump on many occasions, according to the sources. Trump contradicted himself when asked by reporters about his relationship with Andrew. He said at first he had never met the prince, and then he said he's a fun guy to be with. You know, another one of his gaffes. But that whole aspect of it isn't just about Trump. It's the fact that heads of state all over the world are tied into these Ninth Circle activities. So we're not just talking the church officialdom, but state and big money as well. Now, witness C, this is not a victim, but an insider in the Ninth Circle. So don't forget, in order to function, they have a whole support network around them. They have Vatican officials who set up safe houses, who buy off police, who provide the children, get rid of the remains, all that. This witness C was a former member of that support group around the Ninth Circle. He was present at the same ceremony in June 1983 where Emanuela Orlandi and the first witness were witnessed the killing of that Italian man. He confirms their accounts that this man was tortured to death, including by the present Pope, Robert Prevost, and John Paul II. And he claims that there was another sacrificial victim at the same ceremony, a homeless man delivered to the cult by the Italian Carabinieri police. Witness C, the cult administrator, also adds the following. The June 1983 event occurred in the Vatican necropolis, which is directly beneath the obelisk in St. Peter's Square, the so-called Tomb of Lucifer. Now, do you have that map, the schematic map? There was two of them showing the grotto beneath the Vatican. And it's interesting, that's where I, without knowing, I conducted that exorcism in 2009, directly above this thing. And, you know, the hurricane hit the next day, tornado hits Rome the next day, because we're at that energy point. And if you look on the map here, you, kind of halfway down on the left, that's what's called the Tomb of Lucifer. And I think if you go down a bit more, you'll see a colored image of it on the next map down. Oh, there was another one, I think. And anyway, this Tomb U is pre-Constantinian. In other words, it's before the Church of Rome was ever created. It's from Roman times. And in effect, and the scuttlebutt, according to the witnesses and others around the Vatican, is this is a entry point into an interdimensional portal, in effect. It is the way into hell. And that's one of the sources of its power. The witness C says, like all the rituals since 1962, all of the Ninth Circle ceremonies are held right there. The entire event is filmed and stored in the cult's secret archives within the sub-basement storage vaults of the Vatican Library. And of course, as I mentioned, they're used in snuff films. But they're also used to record everyone present so they can be controlled. Anyone who shows up can then be blackmailed and that way ensure their loyalty. And so that's in terms of where we're talking about. We're talking right beneath the Vatican in St. Peter's Square. Okay. Now, with the same witness who is the working with the support group around the Ninth Circle, he states that two future Vatican prelates were also present at this 1983 ritual at the cult. The guy who's presently the Vatican Secretary of State, Pietro Parolin, who was then a law student at the Pontifical Academy in Rome, and a future archbishop and close associate of Donald Trump, Timothy Dolan. Now, Dolan is a New York archbishop, and he was the one who Trump was pushing to become pope, because they're good friends. They're both participants in these rituals. Timothy Dolan was present at this cult ritual, according to Witness C. And he was, again, a young priest and actually a secretary at the Vatican, quote, embassy in Washington, D.C. So here's the thing. These guys are connected at a high level diplomatically. That's is that Dolan
Yeah.
or Mark? Okay. They get these guys into high diplomatic positions so that they can influence governments directly. It's all strategically, they place their ninth circle flunkies in very strategic positions of power. And yeah. Now, Witness D is our police source. He's actually still within Interpol, and he confirms that the Belgian and Italian governments contain closed files that's got lots of evidence about the activities in the Ninth Circle going back to at least the 1930s. Now, he also provided evidence that there was a log, I think I referred to this last time, there's an actual log in Latin contained within the Vatican Library that the prosecutor has obtained a copy of, and it lists all of the Ninth Circle rituals going back to December 1869, including the list of all the participants. And so one of the other reasons we know that the present Pope took part in these things. In effect, every Pope does take part, but you can't become the head guy unless you have. And he also confirms that Italian governments and courts routinely protect the Church of Rome from criminal investigations and stop police from entering the Vatican to protect these guys. And he says that the Belgian police tried on 4 occasions between 1998 and 2017 to arrest cult participants, but they were stopped by the Belgian royal family, the Vatican cardinals, and the military. And the 5th witness is a source in the Italian government. He confirms that there are secret diplomatic and financial agreements between the Vatican and the world's major powers. And this is to protect the cult activities in whatever country they're operating. Now, this is demonstrated all the time where the church gets government protection. Like, blatant example in Canada, where these churches, we prove they murdered over 60,000 children. Not one person's ever gone to jail for it. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And another example of that is recently in America, a Washington state government tried bringing in legislation that would require that the Catholic Church punish priests who harm children, right? In other words, have them included under the law like anybody else. The Trump Attorney General, Pam Bondi, has intervened in the case and blocked that action. And she did so after consulting the Vatican's papal nuncio in America, Cardinal Christophe Pierre of Haiti, who's a close associate of Pope Leo, Prevost. So in other words, remember how Trump blocked the exposure of the Epstein file, the evidence on that? Of course he did, because it's implicating him on all of Epstein's, or at least some of Epstein's connections to the Ninth Circle. And they're bankers, which we're going to get to. Okay. Before the bankers, let me just double check this. Yes. 5th witness, witness F. He's a research scientist with Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, and he's advisor to the Vatican Bank and the Pontifical Academy of Sciences. According to him, the Vatican Bank is a heavy investor in Big Pharma, which we knew already. Novartis, Pfizer, Eli Lilly, GSK. But the Vatican Bank has also funded the development of drug-based bioweaponry and nanoparticle implants, which is connected, of course, as we know, to the COVID serum. These implants were created with Vatican-funded researchers in league with the Chinese in their facility at Wuhan. The whole Vatican funding of that thing has been kept in the shadows. But this witness F, one of the Vatican bankers, is confirming that. He states that the Church of Rome routinely provides children to these pharma corporations and the research labs for involuntary drug testing. We knew that already from Canada, but he's confirming that. Some of these children being used as drug guinea pigs are obtained through the cult and its extensive child trafficking network all through the Catholic Church, including with Drangheta, the European mafia. According to this witness, none of these children who are used in the experiments are ever allowed to survive. And he states that the top executives of these pharma companies are aware of that fact, including how political prisoners in China are used in the drug testing. And to quote him, during 2020 and 2021, I personally briefed Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer. I think I sent you his picture. I personally briefed Albert Bourla about our methods of perfecting the COVID serum variants, including the use of children in drug testing. Albert Bourla approved of it, as he did the use of political detainees in Chinese prisons for drug tests, even when most of them died as a result of the testing. He told me, quote, "whatever is most efficacious," unquote. And there he is. So again, here's the link. Like we knew with the work into exposing genocide in Canada, it always involves big money, the church, the state. It's that genocidal triangle still at work. Looks like a sweetheart, doesn't it? So as part of the close link between the Vatican, Big Pharma, and organized crime, the church is very connected to the illegal drug trade and profits from it immensely. According to this same witness, clergy at every level of the Catholic Church traffic meth, cocaine, and heroin through the church's Mexican, Colombian, Asian drug cartels, and especially the present Pope, Robert Prevost, and his predecessor, Jorge Bergoglio, both of whom were Latin American in a sense. I mean, Prevost was born in America, but he did all his work in Peru. And this witness described a meeting he attended in Rome on March 8th, 2024, called by Cardinal Pietro Parolin, Vatican Secretary of State, acting on behalf of Pope Francis, Jorge Bergoglio. The purpose of the meeting was to expand the Vatican Bank's drug investments in the Western Hemisphere under the camouflage of dummy offshore corporations, including those run by Latin American drug cartels with financing through Deutsche Bank and HSBC. Quote, "This was not unusual. I've attended many such meetings, although usually with less senior prelates. The point is that the church is one of the main actors in the world drug trade and its affiliates, the arms trade and the human slave trade. It's too lucrative for the church not to be involved," unquote. And he describes the close association, why the present Pope was put in effect, was to carry on Bergoglio's Latin American connection because of the whole Chinese factor, because in effect, Prevost helped grease the entry of China into South America to grab a lot of their minerals, as Bergoglio did in North America, as we've talked about, with his deals in getting China into the Canadian resources. And to quote this witness F, "Prevost is often referred to as the second Latin American Pope, and for good reason. He's been connected to Peruvian, Colombian drug lords for many years, and he was a regular guest of Pablo Escobar at his parties. Like Bergoglio, Prevost became the prior general of his Augustinian order because of his ties with military and criminal leaders, and also because he greased China's entry into South America through the ports in his diocese of Chiclayo in northwest Peru and in neighboring Lima. Just follow the money and it always leads to Rome." Now, we've included a link to an NBC News article showing how China has just opened a $1.6 billion port in Peru. And it shows the Peruvian president shaking hands with, what's the Chinese premier's name? Xing Pi or whatever, Xing Li or something. They're, buddy, shaking hands. Huge port, the biggest port on the west coast of South America, just opened. So China can funnel a lot of the minerals in that and extend its Road and Belt Initiative thanks to Vatican money and the present Pope. Now, this guy is quite the eyewitness because he's provided voluminous evidence, correspondence, minutes of meetings, research data, and agreements between the Vatican, China, Big Pharma, and all the various governments, including the US. And that's all in the docket of evidence that on September 1st, they're going to start exposing as part of the prosecutor's case. Now, onto the bankers. This is where it gets even really more interesting. Witness G, he's the sixth witness. He's an employee of the Vatican Bank. And he was a liaison with the Deutsche Bank, which is one of the chief partners of the Vatican Bank. He has personal knowledge of the murder of two Deutsche Bank officers, Thomas Bowers and Valentin Brockschmidt. And they were killed by the Vatican's covert agency, Santa Alianza, or the Holy Alliance is their name. And I think they've got a picture of a bunch of these guys that I gave you, if we could put that up. This witness said that these two officers of the Deutsche Bank were killed by the Vatican Santa Alianza agency under the direct orders of Jorge Bergoglio, Pope Francis, because both Bowers and Brockschmidt were tied to controversial loans to Donald Trump from Deutsche Bank and its secret Russian and Vatican investors. Now, one of these bankers, this first, when pictures come up, I'll explain who everybody is.
So I've got 2 emails with pictures. I've got 4 pictures in one email and another picture in the email you sent when I was live. Is there another email I've missed?
No, put up the 4 images. That's fine. We can use those.
So the images are the Pope, the one we've already used at the beginning, the map, and then we've got the survivor image.
It's these images right here. I don't know if you got those. You can see those in what I sent you.
Let's see. Yeah, I don't have that one.
Okay, maybe I'll just zoom in a bit here.
Okay.
This guy on the left is the head of Santa Alianza, Domenico Gianni. He puts the hit out on people. The 2 Vatican bankers are in the middle, Valentin Brookschmidt and Thomas Bowers, and there's Donny Boy on the end. Now, Brookschmidt, one of the bankers, had provided FBI investigators with hundreds of documents about the connections between Deutsche Bank, the Vatican Bank, and Donald Trump. He was working with the FBI, but then he was found dead in April 2022. The other man, Thomas Bowers, was a close friend of Trump and Epstein, who was also found dead in Malibu on November 19th, 2019, just 2 days before the story of his relationship with Trump and the Vatican Bank loans was about to go public. According to this witness, a Vatican Bank witness, Deutsche Bank has heavily underwritten the criminal operations of the church for many years. It's laundered billions of dollars for the Vatican and its mob associates, and also for Trump International and its Mexican drug cartel partners. Bowers was about to start talking to the feds about what he knew. Subsequently, I learned that Bowers and Brookschmidt had been killed by Santa Alianza assassins as ordered by their director, Domenico Gianni, a man who was personally answerable to Pope Francis and remains the sworn agent of Pope Leo. Now, one thing I should mention about that is on the end there, when we're talking about Trump and the connection to the bankers, the whole thing about Trump International laundering money for the Mexican drug cartels, that's the human connection. And the whole thing about the so-called deportations in America, they're not being deported, they're being trafficked, a lot of these people, into the American private prison industry, which is huge. Pam Bondi, as Attorney General, is a former lobbyist for the private prisons, and they're making billions every year. I've spoken to people in Texas who their friends have been put in jail for 10 years for failure to appear in court. So the Attorney General is lowering the standard by which you can imprison people. You get thrown into prison for nothing these days, including just for being an immigrant, even if you have your papers. So the private prisons can make their money. The amazing thing, Sean, is that we've hit kind of a critical mass and more people are coming forward, most importantly, insiders. And the thing I wanted to close on, and then we can talk, is we got these people to approach various governments in Europe. And if you remember, the reason that Ratzinger stepped down was we had the Spanish government on board, and the Spanish government had contacted Ratzinger saying he could face arrest. We now have 2 other governments who are willing to provide security. So we've learned that Santa Alianza, that the Vatican Assassination Bureau that I mentioned, and Domenico Gianni, the head of it, who killed the bankers, they're tracking us. They're already beginning to did what they tried to do in 2012, 2013, and shut down the court and get rid of witnesses and us. And we have now better security in place. We have guarantees that they're providing security forces that we're going to deputize. And in fact, they will take down Santa Alianza if they try anything against our court. And they've been notified about that. Hopefully that'll provide more protection for more of this to come out, more people to come forward. Right.
All right, so just to corroborate a bit of that then. So I've written a book called Pablo Escobar's Story. It's the longest book ever written about Escobar in the English-speaking world. And when I was researching it, there was so much money coming in from the cartels to the Catholic Church that the priests started to change the saints they were devoting the masses to the patron saint of the dealers. And the priests who did that, so much money came into those masses that the other priests saw what was going on, and they started to devote their masses to the patron saints of the dealers. And they would give the dealers little cards of the saints that they said would protect them. And before they went out and did the hits, the hitmen, they'd go to the church they say the prayers, they get the card, and they think that would, that God had their back, and it was all just one big financial money go around, like you're talking about, Kevin.
It's always been that way, Sean. That's exactly what they did in the Middle Ages. Before they would bombard a village of indigenous people, the priest would bless everyone. They gave everyone the chance to convert. And if you didn't, you get bombarded and destroyed. And they had the patron saint of the ship kind of blessing it all, right? I mean, it's the same murderous activity behind the veil of religion. And that's the point. Like we said, with these cult centers, like that tomb U beneath the Vatican, it's Roman. It goes back thousands of years. And when they say it's a direct road to hell, I believe that. I think it's some kind of interdimensional portal by which, you see, like one of these scientists mentioned when we were doing the call, the Pfizer pharma guys said, the whole point of the research was to find out, is there a biological basis for the soul? Because if the soul can have a biological or chemical expression, then it can be controlled. And that's the whole point, that they want to control and extinguish the soul of the human race and individuals. Now that's, it's all wrapped up, all of this stuff. And part of that is getting people so brainwashed that they're doing murder and thinking it's God's will, which of course is an old religious practice, but you're describing one aspect of it, right?
So another thing I can confirm then, I've written a series of books deconstructing the war on drugs and mass incarceration. And one of the things that Kevin touched upon is the private prison contracts, which are in the tens of billions a year in America now. And they kick down tens of millions a year to both political parties to keep these contracts rolling. But what they need is constant tight laws, huge sentences. So say they put someone away for 10 years for something trivial, they get almost $100,000 a year of taxpayers' money per person. So if you put someone away for 10 years for something trivial, that is $100,000 times 10 handed over of taxpayers' money to the prison industrial complex, which is an offshoot of the military industrial complex. And it's the absolute priority of the government is to keep the money funnel open for the military industrial complex and the prison industrial complexes. So, whether the states are softening on people smoking the green, for example, they have to compensate for that then by tightening laws in other areas to keep the prison population full. Higher sentences, you've got them lobbying for bigger and bigger sentences. You've got the prison guards unions lobbying for free strikes laws, non-violent offenses, 3 strikes, 25 years, people stealing pizzas, getting 25 years to life. It is out of control. It's insane over there.
Well, that's right. And also in England, don't forget, private prisons you got all over England and Europe. It's growth. It's a growth industry, right? In a way, it's a reflection of the whole culture because we're all in a prison, right? They're getting everybody in a prison state of mind, pretty much. And one of the reasons for the quarantining during COVID is that it conditioned people for a couple of years to be used to sitting in your room all by yourself. That way your mind can be controlled. You feel estranged and alienated from more of humanity. And, I noticed in London on September 13th, there's a big rally, both sides of the issue on immigration, right? And it's like watching America, Democrats against Republicans, two groups pitted against each other. Who profits, right? And that's why we say, the corruption and evil is so sick and so endemic everywhere that we got to get out of the system and create something different. And that's when we're talking about solutions. It's why we had to create the common law courts. You can't operate under the old jurisdiction. It's why I wrote that book. When people say, what do you do about it? You create your own personal, political, spiritual jurisdiction, your own sovereign republics. And as a matter of fact, for folks in England, the Republic of Albion is raising its flag and declaring independence on September 21st at Runnymede, which is where the Magna Carta was signed. I think it's somewhere on the Thames near London. And they're going to raise the flag of the Republic and say, we have no more ties with this criminal power called the Crown. We need our own republic like we did in Canada. And that's one of the things I know people are thinking, what can we do about this horrible evil? You're not going to lobby a politician about this. We got to get out, deflate their system, inflate our own. And that's the only answer to this madness because, it's just insane the degree to which it's going now, right?
It is insane. And I just want to say we've got almost 3,500 people watching right now across all platforms. Mm-hmm. Kevin's hitting some record numbers here. So it's very important, he comes and spends this time with us on a lot of the Saturdays, that you please check out of his links and his books. And all of those links are in the description box below this video. And the chat is going so fast. I've got one eye on Kevin. I've got one on the chat. I'm going cross-eyed here. I know there's so many questions coming in. I do have a few more questions of my own for Kevin, though, before I hand it over to the viewer questions. And one of those is, what will be the impact of this evidence when the court opens up on September the 1st? How does the court plan to do its work? Have court people, or are you being threatened or attacked?
Well, it's all connected because it's under tight security. We're under protective custody right now. I think you mentioned last time, my bodyguard Joseph sent out a letter to people and about the need to support us now, because I mean, every day literally could be our last when you're going up against these powers. So it's one of the reasons we're posting this interim report, what the prosecution has found so far, so it's not lost. And so we have a certain amount of protection. But the reason we had to surface this stuff now is because there's more break-in all the time. When I was, just yesterday, I was notified by the prosecutor's office, we've got 16 new people wanting to come forward with evidence. This is like 26 plus eyewitnesses so far. They only had 32 witnesses at Nuremberg that convicted all these people of crimes against humanity. We had 300 plus in Canada to do our murder by decree book. I expect it to grow exponentially. And as that happens, more people are, including in the system, will be encouraged to come forward. So we think this could be revolutionary. It could split this whole thing wide open. That, of course, is what they're trying to present. And they will do everything possible. Santa Alianza, everybody we've been mentioning who are implicated in this, are going to do everything possible to, they won't just smear and discredit, because that doesn't work anymore. Like, smears after a while just help you because it gets your name around more, right? They will try to eliminate us, absolutely. And so that's why I say everyone listening has a responsibility to act on this. So it isn't just Kevin Annett and his crusade, because it's one of the ways to delegitimate something. You say it's all about one guy, Kevin, right? You know, as if I personally caused Ratzinger to step down, right? You know, it's a lot of people working together, but those of us who are the public figures of this need to be a catalyst to have others come forward. And, you know, now as everyone is waking up to, now is a turning point in the world. We're going to either head towards total corporate slavery or self-governance. And part of that is justice, bringing to trial and locking up forever these child murderers and even more vile things, which we didn't even get into today. Some of the closed evidence that'll be coming out after September. It's beyond belief, and affirms to me the satanic presence in a lot of these things, right? And so anyway, that's more of the same.
So are the British authorities going to allow you entry into this country next month?
We'll see. Some of the people, like, I'm coming to Europe anyway to work with the court. To actually come into Old Blighty, people have said, Kev, you better take a submarine and land off the coast of Cornwall somewhere, because they're not going to let you in. But what we want to do is, wherever I do come in, we're going to make it totally public and have cameras there and everything. And if they want to lock me up in a prison, fine, let's all go to the prison. And you know, it gives us more exposure. And that's, if they were smart, that isn't what they would do right now. They would set up their own substitute. This is what always happens. They set up their own version to co-opt and contain an issue, like they did in Canada. Now they're saying, oh yeah, we know all about these horrible things that happen to children. And we've apologized and blah, blah. It's redirecting rather than denying. And we can expect that when you start getting effective for the controlled opposition and substitutes to rear their ugly heads. But I'm going to try it. There's no reason why I should be kept out of the country of my ancestors. I don't intend to be kept out.
So how is your work with the Republic here going?
Republic of Albion, I tell you, the confidence and courage I've met in people. We've been having calls all over Scotland, Wales, Ireland, Northern Ireland, and England. And people are ready to go. Like, they're going down to that big rally in London on September 13th with the message that, look, yes, cultural sovereignty is important. We have to hold on to our identity. You know, the whole issue of immigration, that immigrants used brought into an area where they don't have any knowledge and everything, inciting racism and hatred and all that. You can hold on to your cultural sovereignty, but it doesn't have to be at the expense of other people. We're trying to find, like we did in Canada, a common ground now, where everyone can be part of a federated republic, where these crimes are not allowed to go on. And the reason why it's important to talk about the royal connection to all this, Charles and Andrew and all these people, is because under law, they're not allowed to rule. They're convicted felons. I don't think you have the term in England, felon, but it's an American term, but a criminal, in effect. You know, convicted criminal. They're not allowed to be sitting there having any kind of political authority. So that creates, like it did in Canada, the need for a new arrangement, the republic, and make sure that these, when you vest all power in a few hands, like a king or a pope or a head of a CEO, it's inevitable that you're going to get corruption and crime. And, you know, actually the report started with that brilliant quote from Lord Acton in England in 1887 about power corrupting, absolute power corrupting absolutely. He was referring to the Vatican when he said that. The quote is, "I cannot accept your belief that we are to judge Pope and King unlike other men, with a favorable presumption that they can do no wrong. If there's any presumption, it is in the other way, against holders of power, increasing as the power increases. There is no worse evil than when the office sanctifies the holder of it. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." You get one person rule, and like Thomas Paine said in the American Revolution, one man rule is neither just, sane, nor reasonable. You know, and it leads to these crimes. And that's why we've got to, you know, for the sake of our children and to stop these crimes, we need a new sovereign arrangement, legally, politically, in every way, right?
So thank you for the super chat question, Crikey. Are rituals done under the Washington Monument in America?
They're done all over, but that's one spot because, as you know, energetically, it's linked to City of London and St. Peter's Square. So absolutely it is. And we've been concentrating our focus on Europe right now because that's where a lot of the evidence is. But people in America who have that knowledge need to contact our tribunal. And it's, I think you posted that email as well, didn't you, Sean? The way people can contact us.
How will this affect William and Catherine, or are they complicit?
You're not in that position unless you know. You may not participate directly, although to be in any senior position, you do have to participate directly. That's how they know you're safe. And so, of course, they all know. And they'll be held to account. Like you said at the beginning of the show, every human being is answerable under law, not under their own rules and statutes, canon, admiralty, all that, and under the law of nature, their common law, everybody is liable for their actions.
You're getting asked whether you have fear going down this road.
Of course I do. Who doesn't have fear? But it's not a matter of having it or not, it's a matter of what you do with it. And what I've always done with my fear is I think, okay, what's going to happen if I drop out? It's not going to keep me safe, for one thing. And who's safe? We're all going to die, right? Mortality, you know, is looking us in the face all the time. We could die tomorrow of anything. How are you going to spend the next moment, the next day, the next year? That's what I always keep in mind. And then I think of those children stretched out on an altar, and I say, how could I stop? You know, I don't view those children any less dear than my own daughters. So you keep going, and you keep going with the help of other people, right?
Tristan wants to know, do you think the Vatican has manipulated society into worshipping the devil?
Well, they don't have to manipulate because we're all raised to think in those terms, right? But yeah, it's insidious. I mean, the Vatican was the basis of, and the so-called Catholic Church was the basis of Western culture. And, you know, when they say God, they mean the devil, the God of the world, and not the God of eternity.
So you're getting asked about people who marry into the royal family. Do they get told before or after they marry into it?
They know before. You don't. They're not going to run the risk of bringing a neophyte who then, you know, tries to pull a Princess Diana or whatever. And, I mean, think the way people in corporations think, because it's the corporate model. The whole thing, there's a screening process to test out who can be the best functional psychopath, and they rise quickest to the top, right?
And the next question was, you preempted it, about Diana. Do you think Diana had to undergo an initiation, or was she unalived because she wouldn't play along with it?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure.
How are Malthusian economics used to harbor economic inequality to affect the public?
I studied Malthus once. I'm trying to remember, and it has to do, kind of social Darwinism. Is that what you mean? I don't want to get into that because I can't comment intelligently on that right now.
Yeah, let's keep the questions on subject, please, for Kevin. And do you think these people are human or something else?
I think they start human, just like we all do. But as part of the ceremony, it's designed to drive out that humanity. If you can't do that to a child, the things we've been describing, you're done away with immediately in these cults. They don't want to run the risk you're going to talk, right? So no, I mean, it's a matter of continual degradation, right? And when my first contact with that when I was very young, I mean, and I got into the ministry, I was doing prison ministry, and I met serial killers, and they have no qualms. They're like missing that part of the brain. I think they call it the limbic system, where you have empathy, compassion for people. They always feel they're the ones hard done by. And what's amazing, Sean, in this campaign about genocide by the churches, every time we'd go to a church and try to talk to the church attendees about the crimes that they did to children, they would be angry. They acted like the serial killers, saying, "How dare you say this about our church?" They had no empathy for the tens of thousands of children who died at their hands. They were just upset we were talking about it. That's how psychopaths act. But you see, when the culture is psychopathic, everybody has to adapt and become a functional psychopath too. And if you're not, you're a problem. And you're like Neo down the chute in the Matrix, right? You've gotten rid of, because you can't upset the group psychosis. And that's what we're in, right?
Is there a connection to the Catholic Church and the transgender movement?
You see, I don't have specific evidence about that, but it all flows naturally, because transgenderism and all that is about the main thrust of genocide is to destroy people's natural identity and create an artificial one. So you want to alienate children, you want to destroy families, you want to make male and female only one of 39 genders. It's designed to confuse people mentally, but get their energy so off that they can be manipulated and destroyed. I mean, it's all part of the same agenda when you look at it, and it isn't just the Vatican doing it.
So Nunya, thanks for the super chat. He wants to know about Masonic connections these people have to each other. For example, Trump, Diddy.
You see, masonry and all that is, again, like we mentioned with the fronts created by the military research, where they say, "Oh, this is satanic," right? It's a convenient bugaboo, to say they're Freemasons. And in fact, yeah, I mean, it's a cult like a lot of others, but it isn't. It's distraction to get focused on one particular cult and not look at the pattern happening through the entire culture, right?
Was John Paul II also committing SRA?
Well, that's what we've been describing, and and I wouldn't call it abuse. It's a lot more serious than abuse. Got to be careful with the language. It's programming you to think it's less than it is.
Susan wants to know, is this global?
Of course.
Okay, Glasgow, what is the proof of all this, with all due respect?
Proof. Eyewitness testimonies, corresponding evidence, documentary evidence, and forensic evidence, bones. The three things that we provided in Canada, which proved definitively that genocide happened, so definitive that even the Pope and Prime Minister used the word genocide to describe it. And those are the three elements you need in a court of law: eyewitness testimony, archival documentation to confirm the statements of the eyewitnesses, and forensic proof. It's all there, as you'll see after the court begins in September.
Is it fair to say that religious orphanages were created for nefarious purposes from the beginning?
Yeah. If you believe children are born evil and anything can be used to, quote, save their souls, then any method is justified. But it means brutalizing at a very young age. Rulers have need of that. That's why there's always been a close tie between church and state, because they need the population brutalized so they can be kept in line, right? Function of religion.
Do you believe Robert Picton has any ties to these people?
Well, people may not know who that is, but he was one of the serial, they claim, the Picton family took the fall to a lot of disappearances that happened, mostly against Native women on the west coast of Canada. And we know Robert and Dave Picton and Willie Picton, who died in prison conveniently, were fall guys. They were on the body disposal crew of a much bigger network involving former prime ministers, mayors, Canadian senators, top Catholic archbishops in Canada, cardinals. And I've talked to the undercover guys who went in there and saw this happening for himself. You know, so I mean, it's the same pattern all over. You need a decoy. Right?
How did Epstein become a member of the Trilateral Commission and the Council of Foreign Relations?
Oh, you know, I guess. I don't know. I don't know enough about his history. I just know about recent stuff we've uncovered about his involvement in the Ninth Circle and Trump and all that stuff we've discussed.
Yeah, I believe that Jeffrey was elevated for intelligence purposes through his, his honey trapping, etc. He was, and that network that elevated him would have had him placed in said Trilateral Commissions and Council of Foreign Relations. So, Lisa, Kevin, so much admiration, but how do you manage to close your eyes at night knowing all you do? I mean, I was about to throw up earlier.
I can sleep at night because I have a clear conscience and I know I'm doing the right thing. That's the main reason you're able to sleep. Now, in terms of the horror of all this, I guess you could say that I've developed a kind of shield, definitely, just to survive the personal loss of losing my kids and all this brutality I went through. In a way, I think it was preparing me for this bigger battle because I'm able to do that. I have strong shields about this, and it's protected me in a lot of other ways too. But the important thing is not even to worry about yourself anymore, but find that higher fixed point around which to revolve, and that is the need for not only stopping these crimes, but creating a new world so that these things don't happen again, and that the life of a child is sacrosanct, which it's not in this present world tyranny.
What do you know about South American children in shipping containers?
Lots, actually, because that was a big study of ours in Vancouver, which is the main port of that. But a lot of that's from Asia, of course. It isn't just South America, but it's one of the standard means in false hulls. I actually, when I was a teenager, I learned about this in Vancouver because I was friends with a guy called Tom McGrath, who was in the Seafarers Union. He used to go in on board and help Filipino sailors when they were being kept in chains or not paid properly. And he said, oh yeah, the false bottom boats, he used to point them out. He said, that's how they bring in the people they're trafficking. And everybody knew about it. The police helped unload it. You know, the mayor knew all about it. Like this stuff is just so endemic to the culture, that it's one of the ways, but don't forget, they don't even need to hide this stuff anymore. It's all out in the open because when every level of society is colluding and the rest of us are just going, oh, I don't want to believe that. I've got my own little life to worry about. Why do you need to operate in secret? It's all out in the open. You just don't have eyes to see it. Once you open your eyes, you go, whoa, something better be done now, right?
Goldie wants to know, when do all these rituals take place? How do they have time for all this evil stuff? Well, we showed you a map of one location, Goldie, but there's a lot more places, isn't there, all over the world, Kevin?
Yeah, don't forget, I mean, it isn't just one agency doing this. It's a lot of people freelancing on their own, kind of mimicking this stuff. And you can predict, but you're not going to do it unless you have some kind of protection. That's why locally you'll often find police, social workers, judges involved in local equivalents of what we're talking about. And so you got to do your own research. You need education and action and research. Those are the three stools on which we have to base everything. You have to knowledgeably know what you're dealing. with.
You got a lot of people asking how they can help you to save the children.
Well, write to us first of all. Angelfire101@protonmail.com is a way to contact me. And our websites, there's more information there, depending where you are. And I got to tell you, Sean, and everybody listening or watching, that these programs are one of the things that activated our court, because a lot of the witnesses coming forward saw these interviews, because you've got such an exposure, right? And so I want to say the power of knowledge, getting it out there. Just start educating people about this and connect with us, and you can start doing follow-up actions, because these court verdicts are enforceable by anybody. You know, you can go in with a group of people, and as Native people do all over Canada, take back the local Catholic Church and say, they're using this place to traffic children out of. They don't have a right to operate. We're taking it over as a community center. Once they start doing that, the enemy is a lot weaker than you realize. You hit their money and public image, and they start panicking. So we have a lot more power than we realize. That problem is they don't exercise it quite often.
Is Kevin familiar with the actual horror history of Medjugorje, Croatia, where church claims appearance of Mary, but the actual history was a mass grave of Serbian kids underneath?
I believe it, because one of the people we work with, he's a professor I met actually in Croatia when I spoke there a number of years ago. And he documented the third largest death camp in Europe in the 1940s was Jasenovac in Croatia, sponsored directly out of the Vatican by Pope Not So Pius XII, who set up a Franciscan bishop named Ivan Saric, set up this camp to kill Serbs, because they say they weren't Roman Catholic, they were Orthodox. So they killed about 800,000 Serbs in that one camp. And there are mass graves of Serbian children, especially all over the place. So, these holy sites and that, you're right, they're often used to, no one's going to be digging around on a holy site, just like they don't dig up golf courses. They often put golf courses over the mass grave of Native children in Canada, right? Tourist centers and that, right? So yeah, good point. I'm glad you raised that.
What are your thoughts on Bowers having an outstanding complaint in 2018 of breach of fiduciary duty, which may have been putting pressure on him?
Yeah, I will, frankly, if you have any information on that, send it to us, because we need more information on Bowers. You're getting conflicting accounts. What we do know is he had his finger on a lot of secrets involving Deutsche Bank and Trump.
How can we ever begin to erase all the evil in this world we're in? Well, highlighting it is a start.
And don't let evil take hold in your own heart and life, because we're all expected to be compliant in some way and be indifferent. And once you know what has to be done, then you just act on it, and you'll help cleanse that.
Is the Pope the devil in human form?
I believe, like my ancestors did, that Rome represents Antichrist. That is the opposite to Christ. It's the biggest deception in human history. I don't think like individuals, when they sit on that throne, embody that, yes, but it's not about individuals. It's about the entity behind it and the corporate entity it represents. Right. So this is our focus all along, has been on the institutions and the systems behind them, because that's where you find the real evil. And it can, it's like in possession. It takes possession of individuals, but there's no point and the system always gets us to be angry and hate individuals as if they're the problem. No, they're the embodiment of the problem, right? But they can, once they're used, they're disposed of, right?
Thank you for the super chat, Chris. And the question from Tracy: do you think they will orchestrate an alien invasion attack in order to prevent all this coming out?
Yeah, we've heard about that and using like all that imagery and that. The point is, it's like if people are dumb enough to believe these things, and yeah, they can be fooled by any image. But once you're armed with knowledge of what you're dealing with, then all of those games don't mean anything. You can see through it all. Right?
Nita has just bought your book through the links in the description box. Thank you, Nita.
This one's our best-selling book now. We've sold over 1,200 of these, thanks to all of you guys. So thank you. That tells you the problem, the nature of the beast in Rome.
And all of Kevin's links and contact are in the description box. If you've got any questions, get them in now because Kevin has gone through them very rapidly. Let me see. Kevin's view on the Fatima Santuarium and the apparitions, was it a hoax?
But of course, religion is a hoax. And they get more desperate. That's the point. It's like, we found this in the campaign when we were first bringing out the crimes of the churches in Canada. Right after that, the church began a big media campaign about how they're going bankrupt. And all these distractions, and you know, it's like, it's all designed to get people to not look at the evidence. Like you're taught in law school, if the evidence is against your case, you attack the witness, like they always do me online, right? Attack the witness. Don't believe this guy. That's not the issue. The issue is the evidence, the hard evidence. And that's what we try to bring people back to all the time. What does it tell you? What conclusions do you have to draw based on what we know?
Is this the most evil time in Earth's history? I think because of technology, a lot of people can be affected by evil more so, perhaps.
I don't think the evil ever changes its nature. It embodies, you know, the nature of what we're dealing with. But you're right, the technology allows it to be far more effective. We're undergoing a period now of a revival of kind of neo-fascism all over the planet, right? And the hatred and the whole corporate thinking. We're free. Do you remember, I don't know, when I was growing up, there was so much more variation in what people were able and willing to say publicly. They weren't afraid, you know? And now it's so shrunk down to like censored fear everywhere, you know? It's like, I don't know, you think people will be sick of this, want to throw it off and just start again. And that's what we're hoping to encourage in people, to just get out in nature, folks, with animals and children and start living again. Be human beings, you know? That's your best assurance is that.
Indeed, too much Orwellian doublespeak. Yeah. Why is this only coming out now and not years ago?
It did come out years ago. We've known about these things for many years, but it's achieved a new platform. And like I say, the details put forward by the witnesses that I talked about today, that's been recent because of this exposure we've gotten through Sean's show, but also we reach a critical mass. It's the law of nature. You know, enough quantitative changes eventually creates qualitative change. And boom, suddenly there's a whole new reality here. And we have to ride this wave because that's when things really change and when you can shut down these horrendous things, you know.
And don't forget, when I was growing up, all we had was BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV here in the UK, completely controlled mainstream media. There was no alternative media. So now, you know, there's more information flow. So CC wants to know, are all people in high levels of government corrupt?
People's personalities are one thing, but when they're in government or in a corporate system, yes, they're all part of a corruption that they have to cooperate in or they're not going to get their paycheck. So objectively, yes, they are part of that corruption. They can leave it and recover their humanity, but how many people are willing to do that until they have to?
Thank you for the super chat, College Initiatives. Thanks for this information. We had David Icke on last week, and he was talking about dystopia through AI. And Stephanie's wondering, what do you think about AI evolving and if it could remove elites?
Well, they created AI for their own purposes, so how could they use it? We use it that to remove them. Like, it's the old argument all the time about using the system to overthrow the system, and you can't. You've got to create it on a human terms. The last thing we need on this stuff is AI, because you can't tell the difference between reality and fabrication. And we have to, you know, there was one of the philosophers who created the American Revolution, Thomas Reid, he was what's called a philosophical realist, you know, a Scottish principle of you can know reality on the basis of what you observe and your own common sense. You know, you don't need some abstract forces that you can't see somehow influencing you. No, common sense is common law. And that says that we know what's going on. Our experience and our senses don't lie to us. We can act on that basis. So let's get back to that and not rely on artificial anything. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. You know, the elites are all competing right now to be at the forefront of AI. But perhaps Stephanie's referring to Frankenstein's monster turning upon Dr. Frankenstein. Do you think that's a possibility, Kevin?
It's happening. As a matter of fact, we talk about this a lot in Canada, that this monster we created to conquer other people is now turning on us and eating us. and consuming us. And we think it's unfair because we're not supposed to be the ones who get destroyed. It's only other people who are. But now that it's doing that to us, we can look at what we've been part of and get out of it and say, no, we don't want this kind of system, technocratic genocide anymore.
Indeed. Geopolitics. Is a country like the Netherlands doomed?
Well, the nation state is a redundancy now. We're in a corporatocracy, and we have to recover that. You can, not the nation state, but going back to our cultural, origins, we're seeing that devolution happening, right? Just as everything's getting centralized, it's kind of like when the Church of Rome was formed under Constantine. Just as everything was getting concentrated in Rome, you saw all over the empire monastic communities setting up, like the Egyptian Desert Fathers, and that people saying, no, we don't want any of this. We want to go back to the basic teachings of Christ and live simply. And according to that, you always see those opposite tendencies. And we've seen that in the world. You've seen, like the folks in England who are forming the Republic, they're all talking about creating self-sufficient land-based communities, local assemblies, pass our own laws, get away from this, government that doesn't even operate anyway. Half the laws in England are passed by the European Parliament, right? So we got to decentralize all the time and put power back in the hands of the people, right?
Right. Looks like you've answered most of the questions, Kevin. Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion to the viewers?
Well, just that September 1st is when that starts. That's when I'm going to be in Europe, and we can do all sorts of fun things there. We plan on doing that. But I would say get involved with this, learn more, and this link is going to be up on our website soon, and get the report all over the place. We're doing a media release tomorrow, and we're going to be posting this interview on the release. And just have everyone watch this and write to us, get involved wherever you are. We can send you a lot more information, context about how to do that and how to save the lives of children in your community.
My friend, the stakes are getting higher. You be sure to take care of yourself. And we salute you for your bravery, Kevin. I'm going to let you go and close the show. But thank you for coming on, man. That was mind-blowing.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks for everything. And thanks, everybody.
All right. Take care. Cheers. And don't forget, everybody, please support Kevin at his links. They are all in the description box. If you want to email him, you can reach out. I know questions kept coming in, including that final super chat question there from Crows. Thank you for that. Kevin's email is in the description box if you guys want to write to him. And if you didn't see my video with John Sweeney, who is Ghislaine Maxwell, this video will take you over to that one next. We've got Ari Ben Menashe Part 2 coming up next week. We've got Anya Wick Part 2 in the making. We have got Juliet Bryant and Audra coming on. Part 2s for Audra, both Epstein survivors. Tons more phenomenal content coming out. Wherever you are in the world, take care, folks. Much love and respect, and take care of the kids. And thank you for all of your brilliant questions as usual.